to talk about the New York Attorney General's efforts and the efforts nationwide against opioid abuse. Let's bring in Peter Pitts, the president and co-founder of the Center of Medicine in the Public Interest and a former associate commissioner of the FDA. Peter, welcome to the program.
My pleasure.
You know, we've heard so much about the dangers of opioid abuse, but behind the scenes, there have been lawsuits, ongoing lawsuits against the makers and the distributors of opioids. Is that the effort there now to kind of strike at the heart of the problem?
Well, I think the heart of the problem is multifaceted.
Yeah.
You know, 9 out of 10 of people that are addicted to opioids never got a prescription from a doctor in the first place. They got it on the street. Of course, you hear the stories of the cheerleaders and the high school football players who hurt their knees and get addicted, and those are horrible stories. So the good news is that a lot of the money from these lawsuits is going to fund addiction programs. So whether you're a junkie or a cheerleader, that's crucial. These people need to be cured and go back to leading useful lives. Mm-hmm. But looking only at the manufacturers is a very one-dimensional prospect. You have to also look at the insurance companies who prefer to reimburse for opioids because they're cheap.
Right.
Over 40% of people who are diagnosed with osteoarthritis and diabetic neuropathy and fibromyalgia get as their first prescription a generic opioid when there are non-opioid pain medicines available, but the more expensive insurance companies don't want to reimburse for them. So having these attorney generals focus on the companies with the deepest pockets and have the tort lawyers fly in on their private jets gets news, but it doesn't really, I think, really get to the heart of the problem. It's like the Japanese say, don't fix the blame, fix the problem.
Yeah. Well, Purdue, one of the biggest companies out there that's been targeted by these lawsuits, Purdue recently announced that, you know, it's just going to settle some of the biggest cases, some $270 million settlement, just to not have to go to court on it.
In Oklahoma. Sure.
Yeah. Is that a sign of what's to come?
Well, I think these are business decisions. Obviously, sometimes it's cheaper to settle and not accept blame than go through a long and tangled and uncertain legal battle. And that's unfortunate because the more money you take out of drug companies, the less they have for research and development. What's interesting about OxyContin is that it's been available exclusively in an abuse-deterrent formulation for about 10 years. So people haven't been addicted to opioids through OxyContin for a decade. And yet they're still the poster child for this problem. It's complicated. Politicians don't like complicated problems. They like simple answers. They like good guys and bad guys, and they love headlines. Right.
Well, the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, being sort of strategic about it by also going after distributors, locally owned drug cooperative in New York, actually, that she's targeting specifically, saying that they have direct financial interest in limiting pharmacy compliance costs while also boosting the sales of opioids. So in a sense, she's trying to deal with the financial aspect of it and taking some of the manipulation out of it.
So it's, you know, as far as I'm concerned, that's kind of small potatoes.
Really?
If she really wants to look at a bigger part of the problem, she needs to look at insurance companies and prescription benefit managers who are pushing cheap opioids versus more expensive non-opioid pain treatment. That's a key part of the problem here.
Really? The statistics overall, staggering. I mean, more than 2 million Americans abuse opioids. More than 90 Americans die by opioid abuse every single day on average. I mean, something has to be done.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing that has to be done, you got to have addiction programs. You got to help people who are already addicted. Secondly, you have to get people the medicines that they need and not exclusively opioids. You have to recognize, lastly, that it's an ecosystem problem. It's manufacturers and pharmacies and physicians. Physicians need to take a stronger draw a line in the sand against opioids as well.
Right. I mean, so addictive, though. I mean, that's what we're hearing. I mean, people who you wouldn't even have an addiction problem, they suddenly, get hurt or injured and they have this opioid and then they just become so addicted to it and then it creates the problem.
Sure, well, that's why it's such a potent street drug. That's why 9 out of 10 abusers never got it from the doctor in the first place. It is a street drug and it's got to be dealt with as such.
Well, these lawsuits are at least starting that process.
You bet.
Peter Pitts, thank you for being here on Take 30.
Thank you.